in the last section, we got our little plus button to show up right here, but that plus is very small and definitely pretty hard to see. So to fix this issue, we're going to find our child name parameter on our floating action button right here, and rather than showing a text widget, we're going to replace it with a widget that shows an actual plus icon. Let's take a look at the documentation around icons and get a better idea of how we work with them. All right, so inside my browser, I'm going to search for the icon class. We want specifically icon, singular. So we'll look at the documentation for this. I'm going to scroll on down to our constructor function. Here it is right here. You'll notice that this constructor function has a kind of interesting signature to it. So on a lot of the other widgets we've looked at so far, they all took named parameters. And remember, a named parameter is indicated by the presence of those curly braces. So here's the opening curly brace, and here's the closing one right here. But in this case, the icon class takes a positional argument as well. So the icon class always expects that you call it with a first argument, the icon that you want to actually show. And then in addition to that first argument, you can optionally provide some number of named parameters. Now, that might sound a little bit confusing, but we'll see a better example of this later on with another widget that we're going to use inside this course. In this particular case, we don't really care about any of these named parameters. We only care about the first argument. So this is not the best place to go into this in more detail. But again, we'll talk about it a little bit later. So in order to show an icon, we're first going to place an icon widget. And then as the first argument, we're going to specify which actual icon we want to show. And that might sound confusing, so let's try writing out the code for it, and you'll get a better idea of what's going on. I'm going to go back over to my code editor. I'm going to find that existing text widget, and I'm going to replace it with icon instead. So by just writing out icon, that is telling Flutter that we want to show an icon here. But just writing out icon doesn't actually indicate which icon we want to show. Flutter has access to a huge collection of different icons, so we need to be very specific and say, hey, here's the icon that we're trying to show right here. So as the first argument, to specify which icon we want to show, we're going to write out icons. Notice that in this case we have an S right there, dot add. Okay, so I'm not going to say anything about this just yet. Let's just save this. We're going to refresh our simulator and see how we're doing. So if I do a Shift-R to do a hot restart, watch the little button down here, and when the reload kicks in, you're going to notice that it just got a little bit bigger. So that's definitely a more appropriately sized plus icon for that button. Okay, so let's go back over to our code editor and talk about what this is doing right here. So again, we first place the icon widget, which just tells Flutter I want to show an icon, but it doesn't actually specify which one. To say which icon we want to show, we'd write out icons and then the name of the icon we want to use. So in this case, to show a plus icon, that icon's name is add. Let me show you a list of all the possible icons we can use, and I think the syntax right here will make a little bit more sense. So inside my browser, I'm going to open up a new tab, and you can navigate to material.io/tools/icons. Let me put that in larger text. There we go. So this has a list of all the different icons that we have access to in Flutter. So here's the icons page. And on this page, you'll see all these different icons and the name for each one right underneath it. So we just use the add icon. If we search for add inside of here, and notice there's a lot of icons with the name add inside of it. But if we go long enough, we'll eventually find that plus icon. So the plus icon is called add, and that's why we wrote out icons.add. If we wanted to instead show some other button, like say, I don't know, clear, right here, this X over here on the right-hand side, we could replace back inside of our widget. So instead of saying icons.add, we could instead do, what was the name? Clear. We could do icons.clear instead. So if we now do a refresh of our emulator again, the icon showed inside that button is going to change on over and be, any second now. Okay, come on. It's coming, it's coming. Well, I'm sure yours has already refreshed, and I'm sure you've seen that there's going to be a big X there instead. I won't make you sit around. Oh, okay, there we go. Well, it didn't actually, there we go, finally. Well, that was definitely a little bit longer than expected, but yes, you can see that there is an X right there. So in essence, anytime that we want to show an icon, we first write out the icon class, which just says, hey, I want to show an icon. And then as the first argument to it, we specify which icon we want to show. And to do so, we write out icons dot and then the name of the icon. And any icon over on this material.io/tools/icons page is fair game inside of our application. We can use any of these icons that we wish. Okay, so that's it. Let's take a quick pause right here, and we'll continue in the next section.